Crypto fraudster Do Kwon swindled 4 times more money than Sam Bankman-Fried, 40 billion versus 11 billion, yet he gets 10 fewer years in prison.
Right. Yeah.
So why did the courts give the guy who caused the most catastrophic financial damage the lighter sentence? Today, we are answering that $40 billion question. The real reason conduct, not cash, determines justice. Okay, let's just jump right into this disparity because it's enormous. Do Kwon, co-founder of Terraform Labs, right? He orchestrates a collapse that wipes out $40 billion in wealth.
Globally, I mean, the scale is just staggering.
And then you have Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, who caused an $11 billion loss at FTX.
Yeah.
On paper, Kwon's crime is 4 times bigger, yet he gets 15 years, SBF gets 25. That gap, it tells you everything about how white-collar crime is prosecuted today.
It really does. Because this isn't just about the dollar amounts. The courts, and you have to look at the specific judges here, sent a crystal clear, very aggressive message to anyone thinking about this kind of high-level fraud. And the message is, your attitude toward the law, your acceptance of accountability. That is what's paramount. So today we're diving deep into what drives these sentences: remorse, perjury, and, the long arm of international justice.
Our sources all point to one thing. If you really want to understand the difference between 15 years and 25 years, you have to look at how each defendant behaved after the crime, after the whole thing collapsed. It's a profound lesson about the rule of law.
It is, and the contrast in their strategies is just fascinating. So take Kwon's path. He eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud.
Okay.
But more importantly, he explicitly accepted responsibility. He said he was responsible for, and I'm quoting here, leading the community astray. And crucially, he apologized to the victims in court after he heard what they had to say.
And he forfeited money, right?
Over $19 million, yeah.
Okay, but hang on. Let me be cynical for a second. Was that a genuine admission of guilt, or was it just a smart legal move to get a shorter sentence?
It was almost certainly both. And in a courtroom, that distinction, it kind of blurs. The fact is, he cooperated. He admitted the truth. He saved the government a long, expensive trial. And that is viewed very favorably. Whatever his, internal moral compass was saying, he showed respect for the process.
And SBF, he did the exact opposite.
The exact opposite. He adopted this path of aggressive defiance, maintained his innocence, forced a full trial. His entire defense was built on this idea that the $11 billion collapse wasn't theft.
Right. He called it a liquidity crisis.
A liquidity crisis, which the jury, by the way, saw right through in less than 4 hours.
Wow.
And Judge Lewis Kaplan was very clear about why the penalty was so severe. He focused heavily on SBF's, quote, apparent lack of any real remorse. Right. That, combined with his actions, it just showed complete contempt for the system.
So this is really where the sentence jumped. The dollar amount got him in the door, but his behavior under oath is what locked him up for so long.
Oh, absolutely. Judge Kaplan found that SBF committed perjury. He lied under oath 3 separate times.
3 times?
3. And he engaged in witness tampering before the trial even started. The judge called his testimony evasive, hair-splitting, and full of dodging questions. When you don't just commit the crime, but you lie to the court about it, you're undermining the entire judicial system, and the sentence reflects that.
That really clarifies the difference between 15 and 25 years. I think the driver analogy from our sources makes this crystal clear.
Yeah, it's a good one. Imagine 2 drivers. Driver A is Kwon. He crashes a massive bus, causes $40 billion in damages. He gets out, immediately admits fault, apologizes to everyone, and just waits for the police.
Okay.
Driver B is SBF. He crashes a smaller van, $11 billion in damage. But when the police show up, he says the brakes failed. He lies about how fast he was going. He tries to hide the dash cam footage, and then he blames the passengers.
Right.
The court is going to punish the lies and the obstruction far more harshly than just the initial damage. The judge is protecting the integrity of the process itself.
That is a profound distinction. But okay, let's shift gears a bit. There were other factors for Kwon, right? This sort of shadow of foreign punishment hanging over him.
That's a critical piece of nuance here. A big factor that mitigated Kwon's U.S. sentence was that he's already facing criminal action back in South Korea.
Which is where Terra was founded.
Exactly. And the U.S. court knew this. They were fully aware that after he serves his time here, he could be extradited to South Korea and face up to 40 additional years in prison.
40 years. So his total punishment could be much, much longer.
He could potentially be serving a life sentence, just split between 2 countries.
And since SBF didn't have any comparable foreign legal trouble, the U.S. sentence of 25 years is basically it. The court had to deliver the full measure of justice on its own.
Precisely.
Right.
But even with all that, you have to admire the judicial independence from Judge Engelmayer in the Kwon case. The U.S. government, the prosecutors, they only recommended a 12-year sentence.
Wait, only 12. So the judge actually went above what the prosecution asked for.
He did, which is pretty unusual. It sends a very strong signal. Judge Engelmayer looked at the 12-year recommendation and called it unreasonably lenient. He then increased it to 15 years himself.
What was his reason for that?
He pointed to the epic generational scale of the $40 billion fraud. He acknowledged Kwon's cooperation, but said the sheer scope of the financial destruction, the damage to regular people, it just demanded a stronger sentence. It was a moment of real judicial integrity.
So, okay, conduct trumps cash. Courtroom integrity is paramount.
Yep.
If we bring this lesson back to, say, modern business, where does this conduct get recorded? This brings us to the evidence.
Exactly. The evidence that convicted both of these men came overwhelmingly from text messages, signal chats, all these so-called off-channel communications, the stuff they thought was safe or would disappear.
It became the smoking gun. For anyone listening, in business or otherwise, this is a huge lesson. That electronic trail was completely weaponized against them.
And that's why compliance is so critical. The cost of not complying is just astronomical. Since 2021, the SEC has fined financial firms over $1.7 billion.
No, what specifically?
Just for failing to preserve electronic communications, for letting employees use WhatsApp or Signal for business. You are creating massive, traceable legal risk.
So let's look at the Terraform case again, the $40 billion one. What was the specific smoking gun there?
It was a series of text messages. They detailed a secret deal to manually prop up the price of their stablecoin. One message from a communications head was just damning. He texted that Kwon, quote, said if Jump hadn't stepped in, we actually might have been fed.
Wow. That's it right there. That one message contradicts everything they told the public.
Everything. It proved that their sophisticated decentralized algorithm was really just an illusion. It was all propped up by secret deals with third-party firms. That proves deceit. That proves fraudulent intent. Case closed.
And the very act of using these encrypted apps, that can be seen as intent, right?
Prosecutors definitely see it that way. Using Signal or other ephemeral apps isn't just seen as a privacy choice. It's often presented as direct evidence of an intent to conceal crime. I mean, SBF's team had a group chat literally named Wire Fraud.
You can't make that up.
You can't. The hubris is just stunning. And that name, that choice of app, it was all used as evidence of a criminal mindset.
Beyond just the communication, the scale of this collapse, $40 billion, it also points to huge regulatory gaps, right? These things were acting like unregulated banks.
They were. But the legal system found a way to establish liability using a very old framework, the Howey test. This is the cornerstone of securities law in the U.S.
Right. Remind us how the Howey test works, especially for something like a crypto token that's supposed to be decentralized.
Well, the test basically says that if you're selling something where people have a reasonable expectation of profits that come from the efforts of others, then you're selling a security.
So it doesn't matter if Kwon claimed it was all decentralized code. The court looked at his marketing, his public statements.
Exactly. They looked at the economic reality. He was out there promoting the ecosystem, promising returns based on the work his team was doing. The court said that creates an investment contract. That makes it a security.
And that opened the door for the securities fraud prosecution.
That's the core finding. It shows that even these new, supposedly decentralized models are not exempt from decades-old rules of accountability.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. Let's try to summarize the key takeaways. First, the size of the fraud matters, obviously, but your conduct matters so much more. Lying to the system, like SBF did, brings down the hammer.
It's an attack on the rule of law itself.
Second, DeFi isn't some legal Wild West. If you market something and create an expectation of profit from your work, you fall under old-school securities laws like the Howey test.
The economic reality always wins.
And finally, your communications are evidence. Using off-channel or encrypted apps can and will be used to prove intent to conceal.
This whole episode shows that the system chose to prioritize the integrity of the courtroom over just punishing the biggest number. And that leaves us with a really important question for you to think about.
Which is?
If one criminal causes $40 billion in damage but cooperates, and another causes $11 billion but actively defies the court, which behavior actually poses the greater threat to a functioning society? And should the punishment reflect that?